and we'll begin to learn Chumash. And today we are learning about the 3 signs that God gave to Moses at the burning bush to show to the Jewish people. So Moses is resisting, right? He's resisting. God calls him to the burning bush and says, Moshe, the time has come. The Jews are getting out of Egypt, and you're going to take them out. And Moshe said, the first part is okay, but what was that thing you said in the end over there about me taking them out? Yes, you're going to take them out of Egypt. Moses said, not me. I can't take the Jews out of Egypt. Who am I? No one's going to listen to me. The Jewish people aren't going to want, and they're going to refuse to listen to me. I'm no leader. God says, listen, don't worry about it. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to help you. It's going to work. And Moshe is still insisting. So that's where we're up to now. Right here, let's go a little bit further. God says they're going to leave Egypt. They're going to have riches. They're going to come out with all sorts of riches. The Jewish people will listen to you. You and all the elders will go to the king of Egypt and say, want to go out. We want to leave 3 days. Go and we're going to live. And I know that Paro, he's going to refuse in the beginning. He won't let you to go. But don't worry, says God. The whole thing doesn't depend on Paro. I'm just giving Paro a chance to be a partner in the whole business, but he's not going to want it. He doesn't want anything to do with me. But you, Moshe, you're not like Paro, right? You want to have something to do with me. And I will stretch forth my hand, says God. God is talking to Moshe. God is talking to Moshe. He says, I will stretch. This is an amazing prophecy. God says, I will stretch forth my hand. I will smite all of Egypt with all of my miracles that I were going to do. And afterwards, Paro will let you go. And I will put, not only that, before he let you go, God says, I will give your grace to the Egyptians. And when you go, you won't go empty-handed. Each woman will ask from her neighbor, and those who are in her house, the vessels of silver and gold and garments. And Rashi says the garments were worth even more than silver and gold. And you'll put them on your children and your sons and your daughters, and you'll empty out Egypt. You'll empty the whole place out. That's what Nitzalta means. Well, what do you say about that, Moshe? Huh? You can't refuse that. I mean, God, the creator of the universe, is talking directly to you, and he's saying, that's it, you're going to take the Jews out of Egypt, and I'm going to be with you. Nothing to worry about. They're going to go with big riches. Okay, Moshe. And Moshe says, Vayan Moshe. And Moshe says, listen, Lo yaminuli, the Jewish people, this is nice plans you're talking about, God. These are really good, wonderful ideas, but I know the Jews, and I know me. The Jews aren't going to listen to me. They won't believe me. They won't listen to me. And they'll say, God didn't appear to you. Who are you? Right? I'm going to say, you're free, Jews, you're free. They'll say, listen, we're going to stand up against Paro. Paro, we see. He is very powerful. You, we also see. You're on nothing. Who are you, Moshe? You're a shepherd. And God, we don't see at all. And God is going to help you. God said to Moshe, listen, okay, you want a sign, you want something to prove that I sent you? What is that in your hand? And he said, it's a stick. Moshe said, it's a stick. Well, you don't know what it is, God? It's a stick. And God said, throw it to the ground. And he threw it to the ground, and it became a snake. And Moshe ran away from it. He was scared, a huge snake. And God said to Moshe, stretch forth your hand, grab onto its tail. And he did it, grabbed onto the tail, and it returned to be a stick again. God said, I'm doing this in order that they'll believe you. There's a mimer. We're going to learn about this next week in Torah Or. Because this thing about the snake has nothing to do with anything. This is not one of the plagues. What type of this? He did this trick with the snake, and he does this trick in front of Paro with the snake also. And it has absolutely no effect on him, because even the school children knew how to do this trick of turning sticks into snakes. If they don't believe, and they'll believe, in order that they'll believe in you, that the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov sent you. And God said, okay, that was trick number one. Trick number two, put your hand in your how do you say, under your shirt, on your chest. And he did it. And now take it out, took it out, and it was white like a leprosy. I guess it was like all dead. His hand was all dead. And God said, okay, that was trick number two. If they don't believe you, and they don't listen to the sound of the first miracle, first sign, then they'll believe the second sign that I'm giving you. And if they don't believe also to those two miracles, and they don't listen to your voice, then I'll tell you what to do. Take from the water of the river, pour it on the ground, and the water that you take will become blood. That's the third trick. And Moshe said, listen, God, I'm not a speaker. I never was one. And I'm covered, pay of a covered lashon. That's the mimer we just finished learning, right? I'm hard of speeching, and my mouth and my tongue are heavy. They don't work good. And God said, who gave a mouth to people? Who made people mute or deaf or aware, to open, that you could see, or blind? Isn't it me, says God? Okay. And finally, Moshe says, God said, okay, is that good enough? I'll be with your mouth. Don't worry. I'll tell you what to say. Okay, Moshe. That's what God says. What does Moshe say? Send whoever you want. Shalach biyad shalach. That's the sikha that we learned. He was saying, send the Mashiach. And God gets mad, and he says, Aaron, your brother, Levi, he's coming out to meet you. And sure enough, Aaron meets him, and etc. Okay, so what's going on over here? First of all, let's start over from the beginning. And that was just the text. So what's happening over here? It says that this whole business took actually 1 week. God was trying to convince Moshe at the burning bush for 1 full week. I don't know if they took breaks or whatever, but Moshe did not accept. And even in the end, he didn't accept. He said, okay, you'll go with Aaron. Aaron, he'll be your spokesman. So God says, I'll speak to you, Moshe, and Aaron, you'll tell Aaron what to say, and he'll speak to Paro. Okay, let's go back to a few of these sentences over here. Okay, the first one we just finished learning. Moshe said, the Jewish people aren't going to believe in me. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to say that God didn't appear to you. You're making this whole thing up. That's what they're going to say. Here's a nice Orach Chaim. Orach Chaim, Rabbi Chaim ben Attar. We have to understand, what is the place for this? Then Moshe said, they won't believe in me. After God promised them, and God said they'll listen to you. Also, why did he say they won't believe in me and they won't listen to my voice? What did Moshe say? The Jewish people won't believe in me, lo yaminuli, and they won't listen to my voice. What did he want from that? So the Or HaChaim says, I think it's like this. Maybe it's possible to say that because of a person always has free will and can always make his own choice, therefore he's not, even God says that to listen, but he's saying, what are you going to do? You're going to make the Jewish people into robots? How do you know that the Jewish people are going to believe in me? You're saying, God, you're not going to force them to believe in me. If you could force people, then force Paro. Force Paro to let us go. If you can change people's mind. So what are you saying, God? You're saying that the Jewish people, they're going to have free choice, free will. And when I come, then they're all going to choose from their own free will to listen to me. Moshe says, listen, I don't see what's going to happen. I mean, you're saying that there's no miracles here involved. I'm just going to go and tell them. And then you're going to start doing miracles. They're not going to believe me. You know what, God? You speak to them. You speak to all the Jewish people and tell them all to believe in me. Then maybe they'll believe. That's why he said they won't believe, because everybody has their own free will and they can do what they want to. I don't believe that they'll use their free will to believe in a person like me. And you'll see why in a second. And that's what he said. They're not going to listen. In other words, they're not even going to want to listen to my voice. says the Or HaChaim, this is a nice explanation, but this is not really sufficient to explain really what's going on over here. Because Moshe, after all, he shouldn't have thought against God. If God said everybody's going to listen, so then God knows what he's talking about. Everyone's going to listen. There's no reason for Moshe to doubt this. True, everybody has free will. But okay, that's an explanation, but it's really not sufficient. If God said everyone's going to listen, so that's no reason to doubt God, and also to suspect all the Jewish people that the Jewish people aren't going to listen. Also, we can say what it says, hein, and he just says im lo. What does it say? It says, hein lo yaminu, behold, they will not listen to me. He didn't say maybe they won't listen to me. He said for certain the Jewish people are not going to listen. How was Moshe so sure that they're not going to listen when God told them that they are? So the Or HaChaim says, Yisber al nachon al derech ma shekatuv Rambam. I think I can explain it according to what the Rambam writes in Perek Zion of the laws of the foundations of the Torah. And this is what he said. Prophecy. Prophecy. Okay, now Moshe, the whole, all of Moshe's credence was that he was a prophet. That was the whole thing of Moshe. Moshe was a prophet. The whole Torah is the prophecy of Moshe. Only the first two words of the Torah that all the Jews hear, first two commandments of the 10 commandments that the Jews hear directly from God. All the rest came from Moshe. Moshe went up on Mount Sinai. Moshe brought down the Torah that he wrote. Okay, they all knew that God's presence was on Mount Sinai, but still the whole thing he had was prophecy. Okay, when did Moshe get this prophecy of going and getting the Torah? After they got out of Egypt. Now this is the first step. First, they're just now coming to first acquaintance with Moshe. So we can say like this. The Rambam says, Moshe, what was Moshe's, his whole claim to rulership was that he was a prophet. Well, there's a law in the Rambam. The Rambam says like this. Ein nevuah shora el chacham gadol b'chachmaso. Shalom begufo. Prophecy only occurs to one who is a totally wise person. He's complete in his body. He rules over his yetzer hara, etc. But there's more. The Gemara actually has more in it. The Kesef Mishnah, which Kesef Mishnah, that's one of the explanations on the Rambam. That's the Yosef Karo. He says, he says, we have to look into this. Lama lo katav shetzorich sheyeh asher gibur v'anav. Why doesn't it write what it says in the Gemara? That what the Rambam says, that a prophet has to be wise and he has to be complete in his body and he has to be a person that doesn't do any sins. But it also says over there that he has to be rich and he has to be powerful and he has to be humble. Why doesn't the Rambam write this? The Tiritz, and he gives an answer, this Kesef Mishnah answers, that these things about being rich and etc. Tzorichim They have to be constant. Prophecy has to be in a person that he is rich. Then prophecy occurs to him. The Rambam, lo nachad lapirish, and the Rambam did not explain except for those qualifications that weren't constant. In other words, it's a person that he ruled over his Yetzer Hara, that he's wise. It could be that he just became wise, just became holy. But rich means that a person, usually it means that a person has to be a rich person. What's so important about being rich, being powerful? Important. Even if you want to say that this prophecy of Moshe was just occasional, which is not really the case. Aval Pikin, nevertheless, Toen Ta'ainas Anishmat Atzad Anvasnuso. Nevertheless, Moshe, because he was a very humble person, so this is the claim that he made to God. God, okay, good. Let's say he said, I'm missing, God. I'm missing a lot of the qualifications. You have to be rich. I'm not rich. You have to be powerful. I'm a nobody. The people aren't going to listen to me. Those are the qualifications of a prophet. That's what he means, hand for certain. The law is that that a prophet is a person, he has to be rich. If he's not rich, people won't listen to him. They'll just think it's another schlepper coming from the street. That's what it means. Perush, im tachshov nevia kavios, if you want me to be a permanent prophet, like which it is, according to the truth. So I'm coming from God, and I'm going to go now to Paro. I'm going to go to all the Egyptians. If so, then I have to be rich. Masha loken, which is not the case. Which is not the case. Moshe, who was Moshe? He was a shepherd. This is the sign. And he showed his father-in-law, I'm sorry, Roa, that he was a shepherd of his father's sheep. He wasn't rich. He was out there in the middle of the desert. Mehaluchos Elabamidbar. I'm sorry. And when did he become rich? He became rich after he received the Torah. It says from the tablets that he carved out for himself. He became rich from what was left over from the tablets. Those tablets were made of sapphire or something. He became rich. If so, im yavo nishmat. I'm skipping the lines. Im yavo Yisrael. If the Jewish people come to ask to their elders, the judges, right? I'm going to tell them. They won't listen to me. Why? And justly they won't listen to me because I'm not rich. I'm not powerful. So that's when did Moshe become powerful? Only after he took the Jews out, he received the Torah. This is like over a year later. And that's what it says. They won't listen to my voice. Khan Remez, it's also to claim that he said a second thing. Why won't they listen to my voice? They won't even listen to my voice, not what I say, because I'm covered pay. I have a speech impediment. And it says clearly that he was, in fact, had a speech impediment. Moshe could not speak. So therefore, Moshe was saying, listen, God, you want me to take the Jews up, but they're not going to listen to me. According to the law, they're not going to listen to me. And also the nature of people, someone that stands up and stammers, right? The only people that have a lot of patience will listen to someone like that, no matter what he says. And this is one of the conditions of a prophet. A prophet has to, even if he's a temporary prophet, that he has to be shalom begufo. It says he has to be totally healthy. And Moshe he was lacking something in his body. Therefore, he said, they won't listen to me. That was very nice. Second sentence. God says, what is this in your hand? And he said, it is a stick. Let's see if we can do this a little bit here. Rashi says, Lakach, therefore, nichtav tevas achat lidrosh mizeh shebiyarcha Ata chayev lelakos. He came to say that take this in your hand. This staff which is in his hand, he's going to smite them. Shechasheres b'kashafim. Sorry. Oh, therefore he said, what is in your hand? Only one hand. With one hand, you have to smite, because they thought that maybe it was just witchcraft. Pashuta, the meaning, simple meaning is, a person says to his friend, are you agreeing that what is in your hand is a stone? He says, yes. If so, let me show you. And he shows it to him, and he says, look, it's a piece of wood. In other words, what's he saying? God didn't have to say this. What does he say to Moshe? What have you got in your hand? He says, what have I got in your hand? God could see that he has in his hand. You couldn't see it. He said, I have a stick. Okay, let's look at the Kli Yakar, what he has to say. In these three signs, there's a lot of opinions. Why exactly these three? My ulame dahai mehai. What is better, one sign than the other? She'omar v'hayayim lo yaminu. That God says later, if you don't listen to the first sign, then I'll give you the second sign. If they don't listen to the second sign, then they'll listen to the third sign. Hakora v'alai, it seems to me like this. Here, this first sign where Moshe took the snake, a stick, and he turned it into a snake, and then he turned it back into a stick again. And this indicates on the Jewish people. Now, I just want to say two things about this witchcraft. Number one, it says that in fact, like I said before, the Egyptian children, they knew how to do this trick. They could take sticks and turn them into staffs. They knew that. So therefore, God said to him, what have you got in your hand? He said, it's a stick. You sure it's a stick? Yes, it's for sure it's a stick. And God said, okay, now if you're sure, watch this, and makes it into a, so to let them know that the same things that they can do with witchcraft, he can do from godliness. Hashem also has this power to turn sticks into snakes. Of course, it came out almost the opposite. That when he did this trick, so Paro said, what type of trick is that? That's showing God, we can also do it. Even the school children can do that trick. He said, therefore, he won't listen to the first sign. If so, what was the whole purpose of the first sign if they're not going to listen to it? So it says, what I think, says the Kli Yakar, what I think is like this. The first sign indicates that the Jewish people in the beginning, in the days of the forefathers, Bekumatam, Bishrutam, this is when they were strong. They were like a staff. They were standing upright. The Jewish people, they were holy. It was a holy nation, the tribes, and etc. And this indicates on rulership. Like it says, Mate Uzacha, like the staff of power. Good. That's the Jewish people in the time of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. But afterwards, b'chata'am, as soon as they started sinning, then they became like a snake. Remember, that's what we learned yesterday, the day before, when Moshe saw he killed the Egyptians, and then the two Jews were fighting, and he said, why are you fighting? And they said, oh, you want to kill us like you killed the Egyptian? And then Moshe said, now I know why the Jewish people are in exile. Rashi explains. Because these people, they speak Lashon Hora. They like to say bad things about people, but they're just peeking to see what I did. They're going to, and in the end, they did. They told the king. They told the king wanted to kill Moshe. So he said, because of their sins of the Jews, then the staff turned into a snake. Just like a snake, it goes in the beginning, and like a snake before he sinned with Adam, with Chava and Adam, that says the snake was walking upright. And by the means that he said Lashon Hora, he said Lashon Hora about God. What did he say? God doesn't want you. He's jealous of you. He doesn't want you to eat from the tree because he's afraid you'll be like him. By means of this, a snake was also cast down. Also, the Jewish people in the beginning, they were all upright. They were all holy. But as soon as they did with the snake, namely what? That they said bad things about one another, therefore they became like dirt, ladush, Now that the snakes, they lived with the what are the scorpions and all the other terrible things. As soon as they removed this cause that caused them to be so low, then they'll come back up again. And that's what happened. What did Moshe do? He took the staff. That was like the Jews were before they sinned in the days of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. That turned into a snake. So this was a sign for Moshe. Turned into a snake because they said not nice things. They spoke negative and destructive things. Lashon Hora. And then as soon as they stop, they'll become a staff again. That's why he said, what is this in your hand? And he said, throw it to the ground. Throw it to the ground. As the Jewish people threw themselves down, it became a snake. Because this he was giving us on the Galus Mitzrayim, the reason, because the Jewish people were there like a snake. That's why it says that Moshe ran away from the snake. He was trying to run away because he thought that if the Jewish people are like a snake, then God forbid, nothing can help them like a snake. A snake is, you can't turn a snake into a human being. And also a person gets bitten by a poisonous snake that you can get. It says that everything is going to be healed in the future except for the snake. It says in the Midrash Tanchuma, even though it says in the Gemara other places differently, that the snake is going to be a shamash gadol. It says, if so, why are you sending me to Paro? And therefore he said, it'll come back, grab onto its tail. The tail shows on humility. Humble yourself down and you'll be able to return the snake back to be a staff again. Let me just say two things. First of all, one second. Yeah. All right, I want to say two things. Number one, this thing about the snake. The Alter Rebbe, he writes that why really did God make this first sign of the snake? I mean, it didn't really have any practical purpose. And when he showed it to Paro, it didn't really have any effect on Paro. He just laughed at it. So the Rebbe said that, very simple. The staff, that represents God, staff of life. The snake, that represents all the evil in the world. So that's what he did. Moshe went to Paro and he took a staff that shows on God. It's a staff of Moshe, and he turned it into a snake. That's evil in the world. That's like Paro. So he was trying to tell Paro that you come from God. God is creating you, and that which you're so evil, God gave you the power of free will. You can do whatever you want to, but you're making a big mistake because you're going against God. Who knows what God is? I know what God is. And then to show you that you don't really have any true existence on your own, he turned the snake back into a staff. So in the end, everything's going to turn back to godliness anyway. So you better join with me. If not, your whole existence is going to be wiped out. That was the purpose, to show that everything comes, because that was the whole purpose of the whole story here. What was the whole purpose of putting the Jews in Egypt and taking them out, and to just leave them out of Egypt? What do you have to have all this story for? So the whole idea is to subdue the evil that's in the world, because evil comes from free will, misuse of free will, but free will is a good thing. You can't do away with free will, right? In order just to everybody, then people won't be people. And so therefore, that's what the whole idea was, is to show that the staff was the snake. The Rebbe has a sikha also. We'll learn about it, about the water turning into blood. But just let me say another story, and it's a very interesting story. Look, what does it say? If they don't, God says, Moshe, turn the stick into a snake and turn it back. Then after that, he said, put your hand into your chest, into your under your shirt, and it came out, and it became like tzorat. That's more. Rashi says, because it's a sign that you shouldn't have said bad things about the Jewish people. You shouldn't say that they're not going to listen to you. And one of the causes of the exile is lashon hora. That's number one. So that's number one. Number two, miracle number two. And he says, and it will be, if they don't believe in you and they don't listen to your voice, right? They don't listen to the voice of the first miracle, then they will believe in the voice of the last miracle. What's the last miracle? What's the last miracle? The last miracle is number 2. And he says, how do you know? He says, and if it will be that they don't listen to both of these miracles, the first one and the last one, then here's another one. Take water from the river and pour it on the dry land, and it'll turn into blood. Oh, so what do we see over here? That the number 1 is called the first, number 2 is called the last, and number 3 is called one after the last. Okay, why am I saying this? There's a story about the Malbim. Sometimes, once in a while, in the previous, when we were learning before, there was the commentary of the Malbim was here also. The Malbim had a lot of trouble from non-religious Jews, anti-religious Jews. What they called them then, free thinking. There was also another word, and what was it called? Neapolitan or something. There was a name. Anyway, these were like super reformed Jews, and they hated the Torah. They hated the rabbis. Free thinkers. So they came to him with an amazing discovery. They said, you religious Jews, you believe that there's going to be a third temple, right? You believe there's going to be a third temple. God is going to build a third temple. But there's not. You're wrong. There's not going to, and it says clearly, what does it say? It says in the prophet, there's a prophet, right? That says, Isaiah says, greater will be this last house than the first house. Greater will be the last house than the first house. We're talking about the Beit HaMikdash. The last holy temple will be greater than the first holy temple. What's the last holy temple? Obviously, number 2. Number 2 is the last. It says that the last one is going to be greater than the first one. So the last one is number 2. If so, the second temple is called the last temple. That's it. There's not going to be one after that. What do you say about that? So he said from this pasuk right here, he said, who said that when it says it's the last, just because it says it's the acharon, doesn't mean there's not going to be one after it. Sometimes number 2 is called the last one, and then there's one after it. Where do we see that? Here it says, if they don't believe you to the first miracle, namely the miracle of turning the snake, then they'll believe in the last miracle. What's the last miracle? Number 2, with a hand coming tzorah. That's the last one, right? But there's one after the last one. What is it? It says, and if they don't believe in these 2 miracles, and they won't listen to your voice, then take the water from the river and pour it on the dry land, and then it will be blood. So we see that just because something says it's last, the second house, Beis HaMikdash, is the last one, doesn't mean that there's not going to be one after it. There can be no. So it said, okay, good. Let's say that doesn't mean. So, but how do you know that there's going to be a third Beit HaMikdash? How do you know that this? Usually, the word acharon means the last one. There's nothing after it. How do you know in that case of the holy temple that the word acharon, when it says the second temple is going to be the acharon, that is the same thing as this blood thing over here? So he says, I'll tell you very simply. There's another sentence, but this is in Parshas Bo. It's not here, and it says that when you're leaving Egypt, you should sacrifice a lamb first, and take the lamb, the blood, and put it on the door of your houses. It says, and then there's going to be the angel of death is going to pass over. I'll pass over. And that blood will be a sign on the houses. The blood will be a sign on the houses, right? That you won't be smitten. So he said, that's what it means. It says the blood, this blood here, where it's talking about the blood on the houses, but it's also talking about this thing, the third plague. The third plague that God showed Moshe was blood. So he said this thing where it says the word blood is the third sign, and it comes after the last one. Here it says the last one. So number 2 is the last, but nevertheless, there's one after the last. One, what is it? Blood. And it says the blood is going to be a sign on the houses, on the number of holy houses, Beit HaMikdash, that there's going to be. This blood is going to be a sign on how many holy temples there's going to be. Namely, even though the prophet says that there's going to be a first temple and a last one, but there's going to be one after the last. There'll be a third temple. And the Rebbe explains that one of the ways that why is the third temple shown by blood, water turning to blood, because water is cold and blood is warm. And a person must be warm to godliness. If he's not warm to godliness, then that makes him cold. Water, just regular water. The Egyptians worshiped the water. But the blood, that was a sign of the houses, that was alive. The Jew has to be alive and warm and happy in Judaism. Okay, that's today's lesson. We learned about the 3 signs that God showed to Moshe from going out of Egypt. Let's learn a little bit of the Mishnah.